While I still have some lettuce to harvest, I'm going to take this opportunity to pick that and tell you a little bit about why I first decided to start gardening. Who's that cute baby? Who is that? Woo woo! So when I first decided that I wanted to grow a garden, it was a pretty foreign idea to me. Never did my family grow a garden when I was growing up. My mom always had houseplants, and she had a green thumb in that respect. She would plant some flowers around the house outside, but we never had a garden, like a kitchen garden. It wasn't until I was married and had a baby on the way that I ever really felt like a garden was something that I wanted. Or wanted to take on, I guess I should say. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I felt like it was I had made it my job to not cost my family any money. My husband at the time made pretty good money, and he worked hard, and so I just kind of took it on as my role to not cost us anything. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had a baby. And it was around that time that I also started really being mindful of like food quality. So not just like food costs, but food quality, and just the quality of anything that I put on or in my baby. Since I had also taken it on as my job to save my family money, I breastfed, I cloth diapered, and I learned about like the toxicity of certain products that are supposed to be made for babies and how sensitive babies are, and these corporations just really don't care. But it did strike me as odd that I felt this strong desire to garden, and I had absolutely no experience doing it. So a family member had mentioned square foot gardening. She was like, it sounds pretty easy, and I bet your husband could build you a garden bed, and then it won't be a big burden on you, since you have a new baby, and you can grow some of your own food and really build your confidence. And so that's what I did. I asked him if he'd build me a garden bed, and to make a long story short, he did make me one, but it was not what I asked for. I had asked for something that I could work around, and I felt like, I don't know if it was intentional, but I felt like he intentionally made me a bad bed so that I couldn't garden. So year number 1 of wanting to garden was a failure. Believe it or don't, that year that marriage failed, and so I was living on my own, and I asked my dad if he would help me prepare a garden bed, which he did. And it was way bigger than I anticipated. He got his tractor out and tilled me a spot up with his tractor. And that year I put a whole bunch of stuff in, and a lot of it got lost to bugs and weeds because I did not know what I was doing. He was really disappointed in me. I was disappointed in myself. But it was a brand new endeavor for me, and I had no idea what I was doing. The next year followed suit. It was a big fat flop, and I did not have much to show for it. The next year, I decided I needed a win under my belt, and so I planted in this gigantic garden plot that my dad tilled up for me a bunch of squash. A whole bunch of squash. I did zucchini, I did spaghetti squash, and I did cantaloupes. Squash that year I did eat, but nothing else, and it still was overtaken by weeds. So one night, in the middle of winter, my dad stops by and he says, he must have had like a really terrible day at work because he was in a pretty foul mood. And he said that if I wanted to do a garden again this next year, I was on my own. He was not wasting his time, the wear and tear on his machinery, the fuel to till up a garden for it to turn into weeds. So if I wanted a garden, I was on my own. To which I said, okay. And so it was at this point that I was really confronted with my desire to garden. And I went to the Lord and I said, I know you are putting this desire in my heart to garden, but clearly I can't do it. So if you still want this of me, I need some help. I need some help bad. And I was led to YouTube. Almost one of the very first videos I saw after that prayer was a video by Off Grid with Doug and Stacy, and they showed me in that video, it was in that video that they showed me the Back to Eden method of gardening. They did it in raised beds, other people do it in the ground. I started watching, I watched the Back to Eden documentary on YouTube. It is full of commercials, but it is free. I also started watching Charles Dowding. I started watching Roots and Refuge Farm, M.I. Gardner. I started watching all these really, really fluent gardeners, and I decided that I was going to develop a style of gardening in beds in the ground, so I didn't have to have any construction. I just needed some dirt moved into specific spots for me, and then I could do the rest. To that, my dad said he would help me do that. And so he did. And that year, I planted a whole bunch of stuff. So we got the garden beds made, and I planted a whole bunch of stuff. And I actually got food out of that garden. I planted and I mulched and I used compost, and it was a huge win for me. It was a huge win for me, and it started this real love, this real deep, true love for the garden. And so for that, I really have my dad to thank, because if he would not have helped me at least set those beds up, I don't know what I would have done. But I know that I needed him, and I know that God was asking me, and so I am 110% sure that God was in his head encouraging him to say yes to helping me, because it has been, I don't know, it's just been a really big part of like who I have grown into and how I raised my family ever since. So my dad is happy to report that I now have a new husband who is happy to help me, and he's helped me set up more than one garden now. And it's something that we're both really proud of. It's something that a lot of people can see. We live on a pretty busy street. And it's not uncommon for people to just stop by our house and ask to take a tour through the garden. So not only is it a point of beauty, a point of food, but it helps build some community, and I think that's really important. Support each other.